3 years of his life, both his parents were dead, and the wee Poe was brought to Richmond to live with his presumed godfather, John Allen.
How do you get
Right off the
a
bat.
presumed godfather?
I don't know. People get kind of fast and loose with that, right? What year is it?
This is 1809, 1809.
They got other
yeah.
stuff to worry about. TBs out there. They're like, yeah, so we'll pick a godfather, don't worry about it. Uh-oh, we're dead now.
In 1826, Poe enrolled at the University of Virginia, where he was an excellent student. Though John Allen was a wealthy tobacco merchant, he was also a tightwad who sent Poe to school with less than a third of the money needed. To try to make up for the shortfall, Poe started gambling. As you might expect, this strategy didn't quite pay off, and by the end of his first term, Poe was so poor he was burning his furniture to stay warm.
I think it's okay that John Allen wasn't just handing him piles of money. What does he want?
I mean, you could hand him the adequate amount.
No, make him work for it, make him strong.
Jesus Christ.
Well, I mean, get him out there, get him working, get him burning his own furniture.
I agree with you.
Teach him a few lessons.
The experience of losing both of his parents probably didn't make him strong enough.
I can walk back on some of this. Okay, I see what you're saying.
At this time, Allen was actually angry at the young student for gambling, while Poe was likewise upset at his godfather for refusing to contribute more to his education. With no other options, Poe was forced to drop out of school. Thus began a tumultuous time in Poe's life. Upon returning to Richmond, Poe discovered his fiancée, Almira Shelton, had become engaged to another man. Despairing, Poe moved to Boston and enlisted in the U.S. Army to support himself so he could write. His godfather, however, then bought Poe's way out of the military, which was apparently something you could do. Poe then enrolled in West Point, only to be expelled 8 months later after making himself absent from all drills and classes for a week. With nowhere to go, Poe attempted to seek out his father's relatives in Baltimore, where he was promptly robbed by one of his cousins.
Bad cousin. That's rough.
This guy is being followed by a dark cloud.
Yeah.
It just seems like,
What do you do when life throws curveballs at you?
I don't know, have a nice cry.
You film a gaunt season of BuzzFeed Unsolved
Yeah, I have a
Supernatural
nice
is what
cry.
I regard.
Yeah. I make BuzzFeed Unsolved, that's what I do.
Finally, Poe fell into the care of his Aunt Maria Clem and established some semblance of stability. Poe started to publish poems. Around the time when he moved in with his aunt, Poe also began publishing short stories, one of which won a contest that grew his notoriety and led to an editorial position at the Southern Literary Messenger in Richmond.
Gotta feel good, right?
Yeah.
Win a contest. If all this happened to me, my life is just the pits, and then I won a contest, I'd be like, back on top.
It still feels like the scales have not tipped. But
Yeah, but this is the beginning.
it is
you
the
know?
beginning. It's the beginning.
This is a little pebble on the scale.
It's true. Night's darkest before the dawn.
Poe's luck was finally turning around. In addition to his newfound career traction, Poe had fallen in love with a girl named Virginia. Grossly, Virginia was his cousin. Even grosslier, Virginia was half his age. Despite these circumstances, Poe and Virginia married in Richmond in 1835 when Poe was 27 and Virginia was 13.
Can I say?
Yeah.
Can't be doing that.
Obviously, but it is a thing of the times.
You can't be doing that.
I mean, you see what I'm saying, though, right?
It's very
Don't
easy to condemn from our vantage point in history, and so we do condemn wholeheartedly.
While their marriage was said to have been a happy one, it was also largely marked by money troubles.
You telling me she wasn't out there in the
Yeah, I mean,
raking in the dollars as a
At 13,
secretary somewhere or something?
turning in her finger paintings to City Hall,
Yeah.
getting a nice little quarter.
Poe continued moving about the eastern seaboard, piecing together different writing jobs, but finding it nearly impossible to make an adequate living. When his first collection of short stories, Tales of the Grotesque and Arabesque, which contained his famous story, The Fall of the House of Usher, was first published in 1840, Poe's pay wasn't even in money, but instead 25 copies of his own book. 5 years later, in 1845, the New York Mirror published Poe's poem, The Raven, which catapulted him to national acclaim.
5 years later?
5 years later.
Rough.
That's 5 years.
5 years ago, we started working at BuzzFeed.
I know. Imagine, or even 5 years later, imagine all we have to show for it is your video Dogs Watching TV for the first time.
It's a classic.
A copy of it. an MPEG.
It's a classic. I don't know why that is glued to every internet biography of me.
Because it's a
But it's
masterpiece.
always like, Shane Madej, a producer of Dogs Watch Television for the first time. It is a good video, for the record. Because
And
those
it-
dogs do watch TV.
And that's all you have is that MOV file for 5 years. That's all you have to show for it. No money,
Not bad.
just a copy of the video.
A cat comes on screen and they're like,
For a brief period, Poe was finally living relatively comfortably. In the life of Edgar Allan Poe, however, tragedy was never far off.
I felt like it was up to me with my kids to like make sure this Indian part of them stays alive with them and they get to understand that like, look, you're American, you're born here, but you're Indian. And Diwali is one of those days where we can really show them.
In the winter of 1847, Virginia died of tuberculosis at age 24. Poe was devastated, and literary critics assumed that Poe himself would be dead before long. In 2 years' time, they'd be proven right. By 1849, Poe was said to have embarked on a wild spree, presumably relating to alcohol abuse. By the summer, however, he'd made his way back to sobriety, back to Richmond, and back to his first fiancée, Elmira Shelton.
so is he going back to her now with like a copy of The Raven? Be like, how about this now, huh?
Would you give Elmira a second chance?
No.
You wouldn't?
No!
You don't believe in the capacity to forgive?
I would forgive, but I wouldn't forget.
They were soon and once again engaged, with plans to marry after Poe returned from some business in Philadelphia. On September 27th, Poe left Richmond by steamer, stopping the next day in Baltimore. For the next 5 days, Poe's whereabouts are unknown.
Easy to disappear back then, though, is the thing. Not hard.
Yes, it is. It was easier to disappear.
Nowadays, we got this surveillance.
Yeah, surveillance state,
And
yeah,
You go
yeah.
to get your money out of the ATM, and I don't care. I'm on the internet, you know. Everybody sees
You're
me.
on famousbirthdays.com.
That's right. Where it says that I am the producer of Dogs Watch
Watching
Television.
There it is. We're back.
On October 3rd, Poe was found by an employee of the Baltimore Sun, Joseph W. Walker, delirious, immobile, and dressed in shabby clothing. Poe was discovered in a gutter outside of a public house that was being used as a polling place.
What do you think about polls being in bars? Do you think that helps voter turnout?
Yeah, that's actually not a bad idea.
It is, right? I thought that was a pretty good idea, too.
It's pretty good. You got to get the kids out there. Oh my God. Register to vote.
That's a good, yeah, this is a good
Can
time
we do
to say
that
that.
right
Yeah,
now?
we can do
I
that
know.
right
Look,
now.
be registered to vote. Talk to your friends about registering to vote. Scream at them.
And celebrate with a nice brewski.
Yeah,
If you're of
if
age.
you're
If you're
21.
over 21.
It's a Poe essay.
Rapping at death's chamber door, Poe was taken to Washington College Hospital that afternoon. Assumed to be drunk, the weak and weary Poe was brought to a special room reserved for patients ill from intoxication. Poe never fully regained consciousness to be able to detail what had happened to him. Dr. John J. Moran wrote to Poe's aunt/mother-in-law, Maria Clem, that Poe's last days were filled with, quote, vacant converse with spectral and imaginary objects on the walls. His face was pale and his whole person drenched in perspiration, end quote. On October 7th, 5 hours past midnight dreary, at the age of 40, Edgar Allan Poe died. Some reports claiming he used his last breath to calmly say, quote, Lord help my poor soul.